So in this particular lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to create your first 3D title sequence. And we're going to be using basically everything we've learned from the previous classes up till now. To start with, we're going to create our 3D text. Now, if you remember from our previous lesson, the way we create our text is to go to the mograph menu. We click on the mograph menu and scroll down to more text. So that's going to give us our 3D text. I'm just going to quickly change this to sports. So I'm changing that to spot rail and I'm going to give it my desired font. I'm going to stick to impact. So I have this really nice font going right here. So I've written spot rail, and the next thing will be to increase the depth. So I'm going to try out a depth of 50. That's looking good, but I'm going to double that and make it 100. Yep. So the next thing I want to do is to change the display mode to garage shading lines, and I want to go to my cap section and I'm going to just load a quick preset. I'm going to choose I'm going to try this. Okay, this is looking really good, and I'm going to just stick to this. So I've been able to use that preset to give it a really nice bevel profile right here. Now the next thing I want to do is to create like a background right here, right? So for me to do that, I'm going to just click on my plane. I'm going to left click on this. I'm going to click on my plane, and before continuing that, I'm going to go back to my spot rail text. I'm going to go to my object and change the align mode to middle, right? So it's aligned to the middle. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to change the width and height segments to 1 1, and I'm going to just increase the width. So this is going to serve as the ground plane, right? So there you have it. Now the next thing I want to create is the undulating floor, which we did in our previous class when we talked about the mograph model. Now if you remember, we created a cube, right? You can always go back and rewatch. We created a cube and we gave it a value of about, say, 40, so 40 on the x, 40 on the z, and we can leave the y to about 200, and we dropped in a cloner. Now I'm going to like to quickly show you a really cool tip. If you hold on your alt button and then you click on this cloner right here, we can as well find the cloner here, but there's a quicker way to get to it, which is this button right here. So if I hold on my alt and click this, now the cloner automatically becomes the parent of this child, right? I'm going to undo that. So I'm holding down the alt button while this cube is selected. Hold down the alt and I'm going to click on the cloner. So immediately Cinema 4D makes this cube the child of the cloner, right? If I undo that and hold down shift and click this, now it does it the other way around. The cube is now the parent of the cloner, right? But for the purpose of our tutorial, we are holding down alt and clicking on this, so the cloner is now the parent of the cube, right? So that's a really cool tip. Currently we are in a linear mode and we want to change that to grid array, and we want to leave this to 1 because of the effect we are driving at. Now I'm going to go back to my cube and check out the size. Now on the x and z, which is the axis we are dealing with, we're not dealing with the y direction, it's set to 40 40, so that is going to correspond right here. So I'm going to set this to 40, right? So they automatically snap, and I'm going to set this to 40 as well. Awesome. So now I'm going to increase the count a whole lot. Let me leave this to about 770. 700 is a whole lot, right? So I'm going to leave this to 70, and I'm going to change this to about, say, 50, right? So I might come back and reduce this. Now when you start working with clones and you start populating your scene with so many clones, Cinema 4D tend to slow down, right? Which is why there is a very nice fix to that. So if you go to your instance mode, you can turn on multi-instancing and change the viewport mode to, say, point, right? So this way Cinema 4D still respond really well. So I can go ahead and crank this up to about, say, 300, which is going to be a lot. 300, right? So this is a whole lot. of clones going right here. So we are not going to bug the computer as we work. So all of this is going to happen when we are rendering. So we are going to be able to see this massive amount of clones, right? And I can continue going. I can even get up to 1,000, 1,000, and Cinema 4D is still looking really good, right? So it's really fast, it's fluid. My interface is still very smooth, right? But I'm going to change this back to 70 and leave this to 50, and then I'll turn off multi-instancing, change it back to instance. Alright, so now you see it's a bit slow. So actually I want to turn this to 0. Yep, so I'm going to change this to 40, right? I think I want to reduce this to 50 as well. Yep. So I'm going to position this behind my text. Right, so I'm going to just come here, click on my rotate tool. Now holding down shift, I'm just going to rotate this cloner to 90 degrees, and now I want this to cover the whole of this text. Now this is obviously too much, so we don't need this massive amount of clones. So I'm just going to drop this down to say about 30. Yep, I think this is still looking good. And so I want to move my text up a bit and just zoom in. Alright, so this is looking really nice. I like this camera view, so I'm just going to quickly create a camera there. Right, so a camera has been created, and I'm going to click on this to activate the camera. Now one thing I want to do is to add a protection tag on the camera, so we don't get to move the camera up and down, right? So we don't make a mistake of moving the camera, since we already have a desired position for the camera. So I'm going to go to my rigging tag, and I'm going to click on the protection. Alright, so we are unable to move the camera, right? We can still move every other thing in the scene, but the camera itself cannot move. So I'm going to just quickly turn off this camera for now and then continue working on our first 3D title sequence. Now I want to show you one thing. I'm just going to quickly go to my layers, double click on this twice, as I'm clicking twice on my left button mouse to create a layer. And now what I want to do is I want to add this into its own different layer, right? I can always drag this directly under here to create a new layer. To drop it into this layer, or I can right click, I can left click and add to layer, and I can add this to the layer, which basically does the same thing. So I want to just quickly solo this guy out. Right now I want to find a way to animate this more text, right? So I want to make them scaling from here one after the other, right? Now it should be really cumbersome if I have to convert each of these text to editable polygons. I'll have them scale up. It's going to consume time. It's going to take a whole lot to even break this down into individual text, then not to talk about animating them individually. Well, I have a solution for you. It is an easier and faster way to get this done in a matter of minutes, right? So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to unhide this, and I'm going to create an effector, right? So apart from the cloner, there are other things that the effector affects, right? So apart from the cloner, we have the fracture, Werner fracture. All of these things can be affected by this effector, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is that we can drive animation with any of these objects using the effector. Now for the first effector we're going to be using is the plane effector. So when we created the plane effector, the mode text was selected, and Cinema 4D has placed this plane effector directly into the letters, right? So there is the lines, we have the words, we have the letters. Right now we want to affect individual letters, right? So we want to make them scale in. Now if you remember from our previous lesson where we talked about mograph model, the part 1, I created multiple boxes and I used the plane effector to affect the position and as well as the rotation and scale, right? So now in this case we want this plane effector to affect both the position, the scale, and the rotation of this sports reel text, which is why we've dragged our plane effector to the letters here, right? So there is no tab that says effector in a mode text, right? Rather, we have things like the lines, words, and letters. So these are the things that this plane or other effectors can affect. So the next thing I want to do is to make sure this plane is affecting this spot text properly the way we want it to. Now, if I create a plane, I'm going to go and create a field, right? So now the field is a way of using this plane to affect the cloner object. So it's another method. So field is a new feature that was added in Cinema 4D R21. So you need to be on R21 to try this. Now, if you don't have the Cinema 4D R21, bear in mind that you can still do this effect comfortably, right? All you need to do is still go to the plane effector. There's a fall off section there, and you can choose a box fall off, right? So instead of a box field, in this case, you can choose a box fall off and still do the same thing we are doing right here. So I'm going to add a box field right now. Now when I add the box field, you can see everything pops back to its original position. Basically, this box field is the area in which this plane effector is 100% active, right? So what it means is that I can have multiple box field or multiple different kind of fields, and they will each individual carry the properties and features of this plane object, right? So I'm going to show you how that works so it's not it's not confusing. Now I'm going to move this up, and if you see what's happening, just right in this section where this box field is touching this text, you can see the text begin to move upward, right? Now it's moving upward because in the plane effector, in our parameters, we've clicked on the position value and we've added a 100 centimeter value to the y axis, right? So this is the y axis right here, you can see it here, and this text is moving 100 centimeter because we specified that, right? Which is fine, but I'm going to turn this back to 0 currently. The first thing I want to affect is the scale. So I'm going to turn this off for now, and I'm going to click on the scale. So I've activated the scale. So I'm going to click on the uniform scale. So we have them all scaling together, and I'm going to change the value to -1, right? So see what happens. It completely disappears, right? Although it's still, you can still see a little bit of T. That's because the box field is directly above this, so if I bring it right here, you can see that it's completely gone. Now if you notice in the box field, I'm going to quickly solo that. So to solo a layer, click on this particular layer and then hit solo. All right, so now I've soloed that layer, and I want to show you what these two boxes is doing. Now if I open up the box field under the remapping, we have the strength, right? And then we have the inner offset. Now basically this inner offset is the most active part of the plane effector. So that means if an object falls directly within this, the object is completely affected. But say an object is are falling within this area here, the object somewhat has the plane effector affecting it but not completely. So basically this is just like a fall off value, right? So that's what's happening right there. So I'm going to unsolo that out, and what I want to do is I want to scale up this box here, and I'm going to do that by going to field. You can scale it up from here, or you can just manually hold these handles and just scale them up, right? So as we scale them up, you can see what's happening. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so it covers our entire text, right? So I'm going to make them a whole lot bigger. Yeah, this is fine. So now it has covered the entire text. Right now it's making the old text invisible, right? Which is not what you want. You want the inverse of this. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my plane effector, go to my fall off, and I'm going to choose my invert, right? So I'm going to click on clamp right here, and I'm going to invert this. So basically whatever is happening will be inverted. Right now the plane effect, the box field is giving us a little bit of color which we don't want, and we're going to turn that off by going to the under the plane effector, go to parameters, we change this to off. We don't want the field color because we're going to apply our own octane material to this. So I'm going to click on my box field right now, and I'm going to drag this way out, right? So see what's happening. We're having a really nice animation. So all that is left is to keyframe this. So I'm going to take this out of the frame right here. I'm going to create a keyframe by clicking on this. So a keyframe is created, and I'm going to move all the way to about say 90, and I'm going to drag this till it covers everything, the entire text, right? And I'm going to click a keyframe. So now if you play this back, this is what we get. Nice. All right, so I'm going to increase the amount of frames we have here to about say 300, and I'm going to scale this really up. And I'm just going to click on my camera and let's see what we have. Spot reel looking really nice. All right, so I'm going to make this even nicer by clicking on this mode text and applying an effector called a delay effector, right? So we are not going to use fall off in the delay effector because basically we just want this delay effector to affect everything simultaneously. So I'm going to go to my uh, effector itself and I'm going to change this to, now let's start with the blend. If I increase this to about 96, you see what's happening. It's going to blend out this animation, which is really nice, but that's not what we're going for. You want to select the spring and turn it down a bit, and let's see how it looks. Nice. So we can even increase the value some more and see how that's looking. Nice. Spot reel. So one thing I'm going to add is the rotation. I'm going to go back to my plane effector and under the parameter I'm going to click on a rotation and just assign some random value. I'm going to go back a bit. I'm just going to try and visualize that. So I'm just going to try and give you some random values and yeah, let's play and see that. Nice, right? So we have them intersecting. You might want to drop down this value a bit and yeah, play. Awesome. So you have this nice spot reel going on there. Now there's one more thing we want to do. Before that, I'm going to go to my mode text here and I want to basically cache this animation. And to do that, you're going to right click, go to mograph tag and go to mograph cache, right? So I'm going to click on the cache and just click bake. So it's going to bake everything and I can just slide through and see what's really happening. So this is looking nice. Now the next thing I want to do is to work with this grid right here at the back. So I'm going to just repeat exactly what we did the last time. I'm going to go to my cloner, making sure the cloner is selected. I'm going to go to my mograph. I'm going to click on my effector. I'm going to click on my effector and go all the way to the shader effector. Right now the shader effector is affecting the scale. I want to turn that off. I'm going to click on the position. Currently we want this to be animated this way and that is the Z direction, right? So I'm going to give it a value of say about 70 or 60 and alright, so I'm going to give it a value of about 60 in the Z axis, but something is happening. When I click on this 60 right now, it's supposed to pop in this direction, but it's popping this way. And I'm guessing that's because we probably rotated this clone. That's why it's acting that way. But we can always look for the parameter that moves this clone forward. I'm going to try the X now. So the X is moving it sideways and I'm going to try the Y. Okay, so the Y is moving it this way. So I'm going to just type in 60 centimeter in the Y. And the next thing is, first of all, okay, so now I'm going to move the cloner backward a bit and maybe move it forward a little. And I'm going to go back to my shader effector, go to my shading. I'm going to load in my noise map, right? Looking really nice. I'm going to open my noise map and change this value to a larger value. So I'm going to give it to about 800. And 800 is looking really good. And let's play and see how this is looking. Okay, so nothing is happening. I'm going to give it a little bit of animation, give it say 1 and I'm going to hit play. Nice. So you have some really nice cool animation going right here. I'm going to make this even bigger. So I'm going to make it about 1500. Yes, and this is looking really nice. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my shader parameter and I'm going to increase this to about 100 and see how it looks like. Alright, so 100 is a good value. Now one more thing I want to do is to just turn off this cloner and zoom in a bit to my cube. I'm going to go to my cube and then turn off fillet and I'm going to just increase the subdivision a little to about, I think I'm going to make it 4 and drop the fillet radius about 1. So I'm going to enable this. So I'm going to enable this and yes, so we have this really nice curved edges going on here. We can decide to even drop this down to about 0.5. Yes, and that is looking really nice. So if I go back to our camera view, this is what we get, right? So now I want to delete this tag right now, so I'm just going to click it and hit delete, and I'm going to zoom in a bit to a spot and just try and reposition and try and reframe our camera. And yeah, I think this is looking really nice. Spot real. Now the next thing will be to create some really nice camera angles. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to click on this camera and I'm going to hit Control and drag it twice. So I'm not going to make that a child of anything. I'm going to Control and drag it again. So this is the first camera, and I want to just quickly create some really nice quick animations. So I'm just going to click on the first one, and immediately where this text starts writing in, I'm going to try and zoom in into the text and just give you some really nice dynamic motion. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So I'm going to click on my camera. I'm going to create a keyframe right here, and I'm going to take this keyframe back to 0, and about say 60. I'm going to zoom out a little, just holding down Control. I'm just going to just orbit around my scene, just orbit in a different direction, and then hit a keyframe, right? So we've created an animation right there. And I'm going to do that again so it's not confusing. So what I did was I'm going to delete this keyframe right here. I'm going to delete this keyframe. I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to hit delete on this, and I'm going to start from 0 and hit a keyframe here. So I have a keyframe created, and I'm going to go to about say 60 frames and just zoom out a bit. Now I'm going to hold down Control and place my mouse in my region of interest, so maybe around here or here, and I'll just navigate, just orbit the way I orbit in Cinema 4D, just orbit in a slightly different direction from where we started from. And I'm going to just click on my keyframe. Now the animation is going to be recorded in the camera because number one, we are actively in the camera because of this thing we checked, and number two, the camera itself is selected. So as we move this, we're actually moving in the camera view, right? So which is going to save up that animation we just moved, which is going to save an animation because we just moved around, right? So if I click this, we have a really nice animation. And the next thing I want to do is I want to click on this second camera, which is going to pop back to this view. And for this second camera, right from say about now, this first camera stopped in 60, but I'm going to go back like 5 or 10 frames. I'm going to go back to 50 and just try and look for another interesting position right here, and I'm just going to create a keyframe, making sure this second camera is selected. I'm going to create a keyframe right here, and the next thing will be to move forward a bit, say about 100, and just move in any direction, and I'm just going to create a keyframe there as well. So I'm going to drag this keyframe forward a bit. And so we have the first camera starting from here, and then we switch to the next camera here, and then we want to switch to the final camera which reveals this. So now that we know this is the end view, this is how we want this to be positioned at the end. I'm just going to reframe it a little. So I'm going to go back to the end, say about 180, say or 140. I'm going to create a keyframe here, and I'm just going to go back in time, say about 70 or 80, and I'm going to zoom in by holding down Alt and my right button mouse this way, and then just try and reposition, say around this way. Or I can do something really interesting. I can go right from this section here, and I'm going to create a keyframe. So right now what happens is this zooms out this way. Awesome. Now the next thing I want to show you is a really powerful tool, and is a way of merging multiple cameras together, right? So Cinema 4D automatically cuts from one camera to the next camera to the next camera. Now the way we do that is to go to this object, this icon here, and select the stage. Now the stage allows you to add or combine multiple cameras, right? So it looks like you are editing directly in Cinema 4D. Now I'm going to go to my stage and click on the first camera, which is this camera 1. So I can double click on this and rename this to first camera. I can double click on this, rename this to second camera. I can double click on this, and I can rename this to final camera as well. So I'm going to click on my stage and just drag the first camera here. So we have the first camera animating, and the first camera is stopping about 60 seconds, but before then, say about 56, we can create a keyframe right here and just use my middle mouse button to roll up a bit. And right now I'm in frame 57, and I'm going to just drop in the second camera and click on the keyframe. So what happens is, if I click play, it goes and my stage automatically switches to the second camera. And just about the second camera is about to end, I'm going to create a keyframe again and then use my middle mouse button to roll up to about frame 121, and I'm going to switch to the final camera and create a keyframe. So this animates to this point. Now I'm just going to limit my frames to about 160, and I'm going to hit play.